My name is Andy Cates. I'm a Bingham Group advisor. I'm an attorney in Austin. Generally, I focus on campaign finance and lobby law. I have done a previous podcast on Austin's lobby code and campaign finance code, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about the fault lines report from Texans for Public Justice that talks a little bit about the Austin campaign finance contributions that came out from 2016 in the first 10-1 election, and a little bit about the Austin American Statesman article that reported on it. So, generally speaking, this is the first report that's come out regarding campaign cash, campaign contributions that took place in 2016, the first time that we did have a 10-1 election, first time we've had it in place. And so this report is fairly important in terms of, what should we expect, what problems are we seeing occurring, what trend lines are taking place here in the city, especially as it regards to campaign contributions and campaign finance. Overall, it seems that, to be honest, it's not terribly surprising. The richer segments of the city contribute the most. The lower income, largely minority districts in the city contribute the least, and the middle's in the middle. And that's something that you could pretty well expect all the way across the board. But some of the recommendations and some of the new ideas that are coming out, I'll discuss in a little while, could potentially make things worse. So the first thing I'd like to do is go into the report itself. And, the first thing that it says is that individuals living in Austin's 10 council districts supplied 78% of all of the money contributed in the last election in 2016. 78% came from people living within Austin city limits. 17% came from people living outside of Austin city limits. 1% from people who they couldn't tell where they were from, and 4% came from political action committees and business entities. So first, I want to dig into that really quickly. It is fairly impressive, really, to me, that 78, almost 80% of all of the money given during this election came from individuals. That is a testament to Austin's code, to some of the requirements in the code, whether you agree with them or not. It's very interesting that almost 80% of all the contributions came from individuals, and only 4% came from political action committees. 17% came from outside of Austin city limits, and you may remember that there is a $30,000 aggregate cap per candidate from any money that comes from outside of the Austin city limits. This, if you will remember, was upheld in the Don Zimmerman case against the city of Austin in the last few months. So, 17% of the cash is probably about right, considering that was upheld. So it says, the Austin's three most affluent and least racially diverse council districts are 8, 9, and 10. They accounted for 68% of all contributions that came in the door for all candidates. And in contrast, residents of the 4 lowest income minority districts, 1, 2, 3, and 4, contributed just 8% of all contributions across the board in the city. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that, as I said, it's not terribly surprising. The more affluent you are, the more potentially, the more disposable income you have, and probably the more politically inclined you are, and more active and engaging in political races, and able to give money towards political races that aren't going to be, tax deductible. What is interesting, though, specifically looking at District 10, which is Austin's most affluent, whitest, I think we can just say that out loud, they gave District 10, residents from District 10 gave 44% of all money accounted for in campaign contributions during the 2016 cycle. And that is a lot. That sounds like a lot, and it's because it is. But if you dig into the numbers a little bit more, 2/3 of the money that came from residents of District 10 went to District 10 candidates, and 1/3 went to outside candidates. Okay, so most of that, more than most of that money, went to candidates within their own district, and there were at least 4 different candidates. So you combine the fact that it's a very wealthy area with the fact that it's a hotly contested race, and yeah, you're going to end up with a lot of money spent. We see that around the board. I mean, I just saw this morning an article that said that Angela Paxton spent $12 million between her and the Attorney General, her husband, to win her Senate race, which is the most expensive Senate race in the history of Texas. We are seeing an increase in the amount of money needed to be spent to win elections pretty much across the board in the state of Texas. So it's not surprising that people in affluent areas where there's going to be a hotly contested race for a city council member that will represent that area at the local level, everybody says politics is local, they're going to spend a lot of money on those races. And so it just, for me at least, it makes sense. Now, one of the other things that I did want to mention about this is on page 5 of this report, there are 2 different bar graphs, and they are important bar graphs to dig into, in my estimation, because I think it shows a little bit more clearly what the issue is, potentially what the problem is, and what it may not be. So basically the second bar graph on here shows candidate contributions by district. This is overall money in the door by district, and it's broken up from low-income districts, middle-income districts, and high-income districts. This is showing that overall money in the door for candidates in low-income districts, there's more money spent from residents in high-income districts. So if you're a candidate in District 1, 2, 3, or 4, you will have received more money from high-income districts than you received from really the combination of low or middle-income districts as a whole. Middle income, about the same. Basically across the board, any candidate for election at the city council level in 2016 received more money from higher income districts, or the highest income districts, than from the other 2 low or middle income districts around the city combined. So these highly affluent areas of the city are basically giving more money than anybody else combined, even outside of their districts. However, that being said, the first bar graph on here shows the same, it's broken up the same way, low, middle, and high income districts overall. And it shows the amount of contributions from that district. So in high income districts, it's no surprise that in high income districts, the residents of those high income areas give the most to the high income districts. Like I said, District 10 had 4 different people running for city council. Obviously, it's going to spike the number of people in that area that give money in those races. What's most interesting, though, even though each candidate individually received more money from outside of their district, from the higher income districts into theirs, the district level residents overall gave more money to their own pay socioeconomic area than to others. So what I mean by that is high income residents gave to high income districts more often. Middle income districts residents gave more money to middle income districts candidates than to high income and low income combined districts. Same thing with low income. The low income district residents gave more money to low income district candidates than to high and to middle combined. So that's saying that even though there's a lot of money coming out of these high income districts into others, generally speaking, the people that live in the low income and middle income districts are still giving more often to the people that represent the low income and middle income areas respectively. And that's something that wasn't really reflected in the report, or I mean, it's stated in the report, but it's not really harped on, and it definitely wasn't brought up in the reporting. I think that's interesting because it's not just, certainly they're not just giving money to their own candidates. They may be giving to other candidates in other areas that are still considered low income, and it reflects that here. They may not just be giving to their own candidates. One of the other interesting issues, and I've used this a number of times in my own life, and I've said it multiple times in my professional life recently, is that it's not an excuse, but it's an explanation. And wherever you fall on this issue, it's not trying to excuse that the system as it was built and as it was set up, we're now seeing the consequences of, and we're seeing everybody says elections have consequences. This is a consequence of splitting everybody up into different districts. The people that live in low income districts are less likely to vote, and they are less likely to give money. And so in an era where you have to raise a large amount of money to run, you've got to find it somewhere. And it's no surprise to me that you're going to find that from those high income districts. The number of donors by district overall is drastic. District 10, which was the district that gave 44% of all money, they had almost 1,200 individual donors by the reports. District 2, where I live down southeast, they had 52 donors. So it should be no surprise overall that the numbers just don't lie. Compared to District 10, I mean, District 2 had a fraction of the amount of people even giving money. And you look at later on in the report, it goes through all the different districts, and one of the numbers that it talks about is registered voters. District 1, 2, 3, 4, they don't even break $50,000 or 50,000 registered voters. Whereas District 8, 9, 10, 49,000, 81,000, 65,000 respectively. So you have more people engaged in the process. You have more people that are registered to vote and are consistently voting and engaged in politics. They're almost certainly going to be more likely to give money and to try and influence the outcome. That being said, the numbers are difficult to fight on this. They've got a list at the end of the TPJ report that talks about candidate profiles, and it shows the percent of money that was contributed in the district for each potential candidate, and the percent of money that came from out of district. Districts 2 and 4, Greg Kassar capped out at 8% of money contributed to him from people inside his own district. Gonzalo Camacho, he didn't raise very much, but all of it came from outside of the district. Those lower income districts, there's just not enough money to go around, and there's not enough people contributing it, and so they had to go to other sources to get that money. Whereas the District 10 candidates, 60%, 50%, 66% came from inside the district, and it was split pretty evenly. That's because there's more money there. So a lot of people may be doom and gloom about these numbers. I am not. I think it is reflective of the split of the districts themselves, and potentially the demographics and the age differences of people that live in different districts. District 10, I would wager, has a higher concentration of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are also the people that are most likely to engage in politics and have the money to spend on it. People in districts 1, 2, 3, 4 are probably less inclined to do so, either younger or less affluent. So it's not terribly surprising to me. What I did want to point out to close out here is that this report is being used somewhat to bolster the idea and the proposal that's coming out for a voucher-based public campaign finance system, where the city charter would be amended to give a, let's say, $100 voucher to every citizen, and they get to use that voucher of effectively free money to give to whoever they want. And that would level the playing field in terms of people spending money. That would level the playing field so that everybody has that essentially free disposable income to give to candidates. And so the idea is that it'll be more equitable regarding who's financing the campaigns. I don't think that's going to work. First of all, it's going to be costly. It would require a fully publicly financed campaign cycle, and that's going to have a pretty big bill behind it. Second of all, it's not just money, it's engagement. And people that are engaged are more likely to give money. People that aren't engaged are very likely not going to give money at all. So, those solely giving a voucher of $100 that has no monetary value except to give it to candidates, to people that are already disengaged from the political process and are disinclined to even vote, I would wager probably less than 5% would even use it and give it to anybody, and most of them would just throw it in the trash. And that's coming from a District 2 where I live. You don't see, just like in Middle City, Allendale, West Side, you don't see yard signs for political candidates in my neighborhood. You just don't. People in my neighborhood are disengaged, and that's either a factor of socioeconomic status, or that's a factor of being young and not being engaged in voting. That's just a reality that we deal with. So, I don't know that the $100 vouchers or whatever the amount is going to solve the issue. The other problem with the proposal that I see is that you're never going to stop the people that want to spend money on elections from spending money on elections. In fact, just yesterday, the Department of the Treasury and the IRS issued a statement that said that they were no longer going to require 501c organizations, except for charities like C3s, they're no longer going to require them to submit the names and addresses, any personal identification information of people that give them more than $5,000 a year on their 990. So effectively that means it is giving a government legitimacy to any of these 501c4 organizations that are typically termed dark money. They're not going to require them to tell anybody who gave them more than $5,000. So that's going to embolden groups that raise large amounts of money from people who want to remain anonymous to keep them anonymous. The city can try to say whatever they want about restricting outside money in elections and direct campaign expenditures or independent expenditures in elections. But the Supreme Court, the IRS, the current administration, they all agree, the FEC even, they all basically agree that the corporate money is considered protected and is able to be used on elections regardless of where you are. The city can certainly try to stop it if they want, but I would wager that they would go to court and they would probably lose because many people have lost in recent memory in trying to restrict corporations and nonprofits from engaging in the political process. So, you can restrict people from giving only $100 individually all you want, but that is not going to stop corporations and nonprofits from independently engaging in elections more frequently. I would wager that if you do cap it, even if it comes down from $350 max contribution to a $100 voucher, people that wanted to give that $350 and would want to give even more if they weren't capped at the city level, they'll put that money to other uses, and it'll go to nonprofits and it'll go to other organizations, corporations that are going to spend that money without anybody knowing where it's coming from. And they will be engaging in these elections one way or another because it's already happening. It has been happening in the past. So for those reasons, I don't know that the voucher system will be the silver bullet. Is it a good idea? Yeah, it might be. How it could be implemented, I'm not really sure. But it's certainly not going to be the silver bullet that solves all of our issues. Really, the silver bullet is much more complicated, and that really involves everybody engaging in politics, engaging and getting to know their city council members, the candidates, and really making their voice heard at the local level, rather than really trying to rely on capping how much money people can pay for it. So that's my take on it, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.